What is up, Speezinators? I'm your host Nathan Spees, and welcome to a brand new tier list. Since the Kentucky State Fair was held a few days ago, I thought it would be cool to do something fair related. I wanted to do this video while the State Fair was actually going on, but because the Lion King video took a while to make, I'm doing it after the fair is already over. But it's no big deal because it's still State Fair season all over the US right now. While fairs are usually associated with rides, animals, and all the weird food, one other thing some state fairs feature is mascots. Whether it's third-party characters or original fair creations, where there's a fair there's bound to be a mascot. So why not rank them on a tier list? And by now you should know what a tier list is. If not, then watch one of my other tier list videos. But in short, S is the best, F is the worst. But without further ado, let's get on to the tier list. But before I rank these state fair mascots, I first want to go over some rules for this tier list. First, I'm only ranking state fair mascots. County fair or other non-state fair mascots will not be included, with one exception, but more on that later. Second, I'm only ranking original characters. No third-party or licensed characters allowed. They have to be mascots created specifically for the fair. Third, I will mostly be ranking these mascots based off their costumes, but depending on the character, some other things will be taken into consideration when ranking. I will also be going in alphabetical order by state names. And lastly, if your local state fair doesn't appear on this list, it's most likely because they either don't have a mascot or I couldn't find one for that fair. Finally, I need to clarify these are my personal opinions on these mascots. If you agree or disagree, that's fine. I do have to be a bit strict when ranking these guys, so they all can't go in S tier. Oh, one more thing. This list does feature some defunct mascots, but I'm not sure how many of them are actually retired, as most of them were kinda hard to document or find info on. But with all that information out of the way, let's finally get to ranking these 25 state fair mascots. Alright, first up we have Sue the Cow and Matt the Moose from the Alaska State Fair. I'm gonna rank these guys in C tier. Their full names are actually Susidna Cow and Matanuska Moose, but for the purpose of this video I'm just gonna call them Matt and Sue, just to make things easier. The reason I'm putting them in C tier is because, well, they're not really the most original in terms of the costumes. The characters I think are fine, but the costumes are just regular mascot costumes you can buy anywhere. Heck, I just googled cow mascot and I googled moose mascot and I found the exact same costumes. Also, it seems like they only use the costumes for the state fair, whereas on social media they only use like stuffed animals of the characters. Although I do like the idea of a cow being the mascot for the state fair. I mean, cows are very common animals you expect to see at the state fair. And the moose is the state animal of Alaska, so that also makes sense. But anyways, they're not bad designs. I'm gonna put them in C tier, but they could have been a lot better. Next up we have Martha Midway from the Arizona State Fair. Now Martha is interesting because unlike the other mascots which are all walk-around costume characters, Martha is an actual human being, or at least a character being portrayed by somebody not wearing a full mascot costume. Martha is actually very beloved by fairgoers, so I don't know if this is going to be a hot take or not, but I'm going to put her in D tier. I don't really like this mascot that much. She looks like a mix between Miss Frizzle and Barbie. And she has hair that's supposed to resemble cotton candy, but it looks a little messy. Also, she reminds me of an old school teacher I had in high school that I absolutely hated, so this mascot kind of gives me PTSD, so I'm going to put her in D tier. We go from one bad mascot to a really great mascot, that being Poppy the Bear from the California State Fair. I'm going to put him in S tier. I really do like this guy's design. He's supposed to kind of look like a stuffed animal. He reminds me of an old stuffed bear I used to have as a kid. He's also a pretty funny mascot and he's got some really great dance moves. I mean, look at him go. I also love his jersey and basketball type outfit. I think it suits him really well. And also, unlike other fairs, this fair actually uses the mascot for promotions and events and on social media. Not just for the fair, but for other things too. I was almost going to put him in A tier just because his design is just a teensy bit creepy, but honestly those dance moves blew me away, so I'm going to put him in S tier. Next up we have Harvey Hogg from the Delaware State Fair. I'm going to put Harvey in B tier. I like the older design much better, the one that was made in I think the 90s. His current design makes him look kind of like the pig from Super Y. And the reason why he's not in a higher tier is because I feel like he's way too skinny for a pig. Pigs are supposed to be big, chunky animals, and Harvey here is very skinny. Although I do like the idea of a pig being the mascot for a state fair. It's something a little different compared to, say, a cow. And other than him being skinny, I do like his design a lot. So that's why he's going in B tier. Next is Sonny the Sun from the Florida State Fair. I'm gonna put Sonny in A tier. I really love this guy's design. I love all the colors. I love his sunglasses and swimming trunks. And a sun as the mascot makes a lot of sense considering Florida is the Sunshine State and is really, really hot. So a sun mascot makes the most sense for a state fair. The only reason he's not in A tier is because I feel like the costume might be a bit too big and maybe a little heavy. I feel like if he fell over, he would have a really hard time getting up. But other than that, I do love this guy's design. I was almost going to put him in S tier, but I'm going to settle for A tier. Next up, we have Happy from the Eastern Idaho State Fair. Okay, first off, what in the hell is this? What is this supposed to be? Like a face? Is it supposed to be lips or I don't know what it's supposed to be. He kind of reminds me of the McDonald's Happy Meal box Minion ripoff. Oh my god, the CGI version looks even worse. Get this thing away from me. Imagine seeing this at night. My god, no wonder he was retired. At least I hope he was retired. Yeah, this guy, he's definitely going in F tier. I would not put him any tier above F tier. Next up we have Injun Andy from the Indiana State Fair. Now this is going to be a very, very controversial mascot. Easily the most controversial mascot on this entire tier list. Even before his official debut, there were calls to retire him as many viewed him as being racist and offensive to Native Americans. Though despite the outrage, he still appeared at the 1981 State Fair, but he was quickly retired afterwards, and never brought up ever again. Which, yeah, this design is pretty outdated and probably a bit offensive, and yeah, the costume looked pretty weird too. If you're wondering what's going on with his nose, that's actually a target on his nose. But yeah, this mascot did not age well, and I have to put him in F tier or otherwise I might get cancelled. The Indiana State Fair would later go on to have these two cow mascots, but these two aren't really that good either, and ever since then they've never had a mascot. So yeah, Injun Andy is F tier. Next up we have Fairfield and Rosita from the Iowa State Fair. I'm gonna put these guys in S tier. I really love their designs. They're actually supposed to be ribbons, which makes sense because this is the state fair, and obviously you go to a state fair to win ribbons, and blue ribbons are the best ribbons, so making your mascot blue ribbons makes a lot of sense. I was going to put them in A tier because I thought their faces looked a little off, and also, they kind of look like flowers more than ribbons, but I started to like the designs a bit more the more I started looking at them and researching about them. They almost kind of remind me of the Puzzles Fun Dome mascot, which is a place that was here in Louisville that I don't think it's open anymore, but our mascot kind of looked like these mascots. I really do love the color designs of these guys. The red, yellow, and blue primary colors work really well. Although I think Rosita's actually purple, not blue. But anyways, I'm going to put these guys in S tier. I really love them. They're probably the best ribbon mascots I've ever seen. Actually, they're the only ribbon mascots I've ever seen. Next up we have Ike the Bison from the Kansas State Fair. I'm going to put him in A tier. Now at first glance you may see this guy and think, wait, I think I've seen this guy before. And if you think that, you're not wrong. That's because Ike the Bison looks very similar to Blazin' Bill from Buffalo Wild Wings. And that's not a coincidence, because Ike is actually made by the same company who made the Buffalo Wild Wings mascot, Olympus Group. In fact, the two have actually canonically met each other before. I think the reason why these two look the same is because this could be Olympus Group's default Buffalo mascot head, and not exclusive to Buffalo Wild Wings, so they probably used this buffalo head on any Buffalo mascot, including this one. But all the Buffalo Wild Wings stuff aside, I really do like Ike. He is probably one of the better looking state fair mascots. I really love his little farm outfit and the overalls, and I also really like the marketing and advertising they do with him. So yeah, he's definitely one of the best state fair mascots I've seen, so I'm going to put him in A tier. Next up we come up to my neck of the woods, the Kentucky State Fair mascot, Fairbear. Now I've got some things to say about Fairbear considering he is my local state fair mascot. But first things first, some people may think that Freddie Farm Bureau, the big statue guy at Freedom Hall, a lot of people think he's the mascot of the state fair, but he's not. Although I can see where you're coming from. But no, in reality, Fair Bear is the mascot of the Kentucky State Fair. Now, normally I'm a bit biased whenever ranking Kentucky mascots, but for Fair Bear, I'm going to put him in B tier. That's just because I really like the older costumes much better than the current one. Those actually look a bit more bear-like, and they also kind of give off old-school Hanna-Barbera vibes. This new costume isn't bad, it's not terrible, but it could have been better. He almost looks more like a koala than a bear, though. Also, they kind of took away some of the bear elements with this costume. It's really just a head and arms. The rest of him is just a regular t-shirt, blue jeans, and red and white sneakers. Actually, wait. Where have I seen this design before? I feel like I've seen it before. You know, jeans, red and white sneakers? Maybe it's just nothing. Let's move on. Speaking of Chuck E. Cheese, that's a good segue into the next mascot. That being Mr. Biggie from the Big E Fair in Massachusetts. Look at this guy's face. Come on, look at it. You can't convince me otherwise that they probably took inspiration from Chuck E. Cheese when designing this character. I mean, come on. Come on, they look so similar. It's uncanny almost. Even look at the nose and teeth placement. It looks the same. Anyways, I'm gonna put Mr. Biggie in B tier. Mostly because I don't know what animal he is. I think he's a rabbit because in this photo you can see a cottontail, or what looks like a cottontail. So maybe he's a rabbit or some kind of hare, but also I think his face might be a bit creepy, aside from the Chuck E. Cheese vibes that he gives. But other than his face and his species, I do like this guy a lot. I like his outfit and I like his hat. And I also think the name is pretty funny and clever, Mr. Big E, although he is not related to Big E Cheese though, unfortunately. But anyways, I think Mr. Biggie the Rabbit is a really good state fair mascot, so I'm going to put him in B tier. Next up we have Fairchild the Gopher from the Minnesota State Fair. This guy easily goes in S tier. He is one of, if not the most famous fair mascot ever created. He's been around for nearly 60 years and he even has an iconic statue located on the fairgrounds. One thing I like about Fairchild is that unlike other mascots that I've talked about on this video so far, he actually acts like a mascot. He's hyper and crazy and super animated, almost like an actual Disney theme park character. The Minnesota Fair also has another mascot named Fairborn, who is meant to be Fairchild's nephew. He's the one in blue, Fairchild is in green. As for why a gopher is the mascot, it's because Minnesota is known as the Gopher State. That's also why their college team is called the Gophers. But yeah, overall, I really love Fairchild the Gopher. He's one of the best fair mascots ever created, and he rightfully deserves S tier. Next up we have Bartholomew from the Missouri State Fair. He's another S tier mascot. Okay, first off, I really love the name pun, Bartholomew, Bartholomew, and I also like how they went with a unique animal as opposed to something like a cow or a pig. They went with a mule. Although that's probably because the Missouri Mule is the state animal of Missouri. So a mule definitely makes sense. I really like this guy's costume. It's very good looking, it's very clean, very slick. I love the tuxedo. He almost looks like he could be like a casino worker as opposed to a fair mascot, but I still really love the outfit. And yeah, I love the idea of having an animal like a mule be the mascot, something you don't see every day. So that's why I think he's S tier. Next up we have Bobby the Barker from the Nebraska State Fair. Bobby is another interesting case because she is also a human as opposed to an animal, though I find her way more unique than Martha Midway. And that's just because of the magic trick involved with the character. You see, she's a Midway Barker, and unlike other Barkers, she doesn't have legs, it's just a torso. It's achieved by a magic trick, although I don't know how the trick works. I guess it's really just magic. But despite the magic, I'm still going to put her in C tier just because there's nothing really too special about her other than the magic trick, and also, this idea of a Midway Barker is not exclusive to the Nebraska State Fair. Other state fairs have done it before, so that's only why she's going in C tier. Also, I don't know if she's still used anymore. Next up we have Phil and Phyllis from the New Mexico State Fair. I'm going to put this cowboy couple in C tier. Okay, they're not actually cows, they're horses, which is really cool because you don't see horse mascots for state fairs too often. Although I've seen better horse mascots before. These guys, they're not bad, but they could have been a little better. I really love their outfits. It's a nice country cowboy outfit for a couple. My main issue with the two is that I think their faces are pretty creepy, especially when you look at them from certain angles, which probably explains why they're retired. But other than that, I think they're perfectly fine mascots. Maybe a little creepy, but not by much. I've seen creepier. So anyway, they're going in C tier. Next up, we have Pop and Candy from the Great New York State Fair. I'm going to put these two in A tier. I really don't have much to say other than the fact that I do like that they went with something a bit more unique compared to an animal or a human. In this case, having the mascots be corn and an apple. I do really like their designs. They definitely give off VeggieTale vibes, although I think they kind of look more like the Hershey's Chocolate World mascots. But yeah, I really don't have much to say on these two. They're just fruit. And I guess a crop. Though I will say the reason why they're not in S tier is because the costumes look a little weird at some angles. They definitely look better in 2D artwork, but they're still great mascots nonetheless. Next up, we have Casey Cardinal from the North Carolina State Fair. I'm going to put him in S tier. Am I biased because I like cardinals a little bit? Yeah, kinda. But I also have other reasons for putting him in S tier, and here's why. So Casey being a cardinal makes a lot of sense considering the cardinal is the state bird of North Carolina. Casey was actually the mascot of the state fair back in the 60s. However, he was later retired, but then came back in the 2010s, because a lot of people loved him. In terms of his costume, I really like his costume a lot. I think he's one of the best looking cardinal mascots I've ever seen. And one cool thing I like about Casey Cardinal is that, unlike other cardinal mascots who have yellow feet and legs, Casey actually has gray feet and legs, which looks a bit more accurate to real cardinals. This guy just makes me really happy for some reason, so that's why he's going in S tier. Next up, we have Freddy the Flickertail from the North Dakota State Fair. I'm going to put this guy in D tier, just because he looks very generic, and the costume looks pretty cheap. However, the reason why I'm not putting him in F tier is because at least the fair had a mascot, even though he's retired now, and also, I really like the idea of a flickertail being the mascot for the North Dakota State Fair because it's a very unique species choice, and also North Dakota is known as the flickertail state. Also, if anybody wants to know what a flickertail is, it's also known as a Richardson's ground squirrel. But other than that, Freddy is just pretty generic, so that's why he's going in D tier. Not the worst, but really not that good either. Next up, we have Butters the cow from the Ohio State Fair. I'm going to put Butters in B tier. He's definitely one of the more unique looking cow mascots compared to some of the other ones on this list. I like him better than the Alaska mascot. Although I will say, the reason why he's in B tier and not an E tier above is because I think his face looks a bit creepy, and I also don't really like how his horns look when they're attached to his head. Although I do think he looks a lot better in 2D artwork compared to the actual costume. But other than that, I think he's pretty funny and pretty entertaining mascot. He reminds me of Otis from back at the barnyard. But anyways, Butters is a pretty good cow mascot. Definitely one of the better ones, so he's going to go in B tier. Next we move on to Oklahoma, but we're not going to do the Oklahoma State Fair. We're going to do the Tulsa State Fair, and their mascot, Dizzy the Goat. Now I'm going to put Dizzy in D tier, just because I think he looks really creepy. He looks like a drug addict. Like, his face just looks really off. But then again, goats in general look pretty weird too. Actually, the reason why he probably looks a bit off is because this character is actually a puppet. The puppet was created specifically for commercials to advertise the state fair. But while I think that design works okay for a puppet, it doesn't really translate that well to a costumed character, even though the two look very similar. But the only reason why he's not in F tier is because a goat is a unique choice for a mascot considering none of the other state fairs on here have a goat mascot, and also the commercials with the puppet are pretty funny. They remind me of the Pets.com commercials with their puppet. So yeah, Dizzy the Goat, a really interesting and creative choice for a mascot, although I think it could have been executed a little better, so that's why he's going in D tier. Next we have Sunny the Sunflower from the Oregon State Fair. I'm going to put this guy in S tier. So here's a fun fact. When I originally did this tier list, I put Sunny in A tier, but after doing further research, I decided to put him in S tier. That meant I had to completely redo the tier list just to put Sunny in S tier. So was it worth it to change the tier list in order to put Sunny in S tier? I would say so. I think he's better than the other Sunny mascot, And I really do love his design. I love the overalls. I love the big flower head and the sunglasses. I originally thought he was a sunflower, but after doing some research on flowers in Oregon, I discovered he's probably an Oregon sunshine flower. I mean, if you look at the two side by side, they look very similar. Another reason why he's in S tier is because he even has his own dance, that being the Sunny Shuffle. And with a name like that, why put him any tier below S tier? So that's why Sunny the Sunflower deserves to be an S tier, for me at least. Alright, so for the next mascot, remember at the beginning of the video when I said I was only going to do state fair mascots except for one? Well, this is the exception. We're going to Tennessee for this next mascot, not the Tennessee State Fair, but rather the Tennessee Valley Fair, and their mascot, Jasper the Rooster. I'm going to put Jasper in A tier. If Jasper was actually the State Fair mascot, then he would be an S tier, but since he's not, he has to settle for A tier. I really like this guy's design so much. I love the idea of a rooster being the mascot. It's not a chicken, but it's a rooster, so it's a bit more unique. He kind of reminds me of Doodles, which was the original Chick-fil-A mascot before the cows. But I actually think Jasper is better than Doodles. I really like his design. I love the overalls. I love the, rooster look to him. So, I wish he was the State Fair mascot so that I could put him in S tier, but I'll settle for A tier. Next up we have who is probably the most famous mascot in any State Fair mascot, period. That being Big Tex from the State Fair of Texas. He rightfully deserves to go in S tier. Big Tex has been around for many generations and is without a doubt one of, if not the most famous fair mascot of all time. Most people know Big Tex for his giant talking animatronic statue that's at the State Fair every year, waving and talking to everybody that walks by. People love him so much that one time when the statue caught fire, people actually treated the fire like they lost a family member. Luckily, Big Tex came back the next year bigger and better than ever. Eventually, a costumed version of Big Tex would be created, and he was actually not well received when he first debuted because it kind of defeated the purpose of the original Big Tex. He's supposed to be big, not the same size as any other person. However, people have since warmed up to him. I honestly think Big Tex is one of the best cowboy mascots ever. I think he's way better than the Dallas Cowboys mascot, and I think he's one of the least creepy looking humanoid mascot costumes that I've seen so far. So that's why Big Tex goes in S tier. No other way around it. Next up we have Big Washington from the Washington State Fair. I'm going to put Washington in A tier. He is a Sasquatch, which if you guys live in Seattle or Washington or anywhere around Washington, you would know that Sasquatch is very popular there. That's where most of the Bigfoot Sasquatch sightings are. So making that the mascot of the State Fair of Washington makes a lot of sense. And I really love this guy's design. He kind of looks like a mix between Sweetums from the Muppets and a Monsters Inc. character. He just looks so friendly, and he's definitely one of the more approachable Bigfoot mascots. The only reason why he's not in S tier is because I really do not like the name. Big Washington? Like really? What kind of a name is that? You could have just called him Bigfoot or Sasquatch and I wouldn't be complaining. But Big Washington? Whoever came up with that name probably needs to be fired. But anyways, other than that, I really love this guy, so I'm going to put him in A tier. We have now come to the last mascots on this tier list, and they are from the Wisconsin State Fair. Now, the Wisconsin State Fair does not have any mascots, but back in the early 80s they did have some, that being a cow and a pig. I'm going to put these two in D tier just because I think they're pretty creepy. Maybe it's just because of the old photo quality, but I don't know if I would want to see these in person. The cow is fine, but the eyes are facing two different directions, which is really off. But the pig, on the other hand, oh my god, what the hell happened to this pig? He looks like a serial killer. Why does he look so angry? He looks like he's plotting the murder of everybody at the state fair. Anyways, enough rambling. I'm gonna put these two in D tier just because that pig is creeping me out. The cow is fine, but yeah, I just wanna I don't want to see these guys anymore. And that's my state fair mascot tier list. What do you think of this? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and comment down below which of these state fair mascots is your favorite. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the NBA mascot tier list coming in October. Bye bye!